don't know if I'd say I process everything. There's, as you sit back and reflect on the season, there's things that pop in mind that I hadn't thought about. There's always some new things. But yeah, I think it was a season with many sort of just twists and turns and variables and different things that were going on. Ultimately, like the timeliness of our injuries and the fact that we could never really put the semblance of what you would probably define as our top group together in any sort of consistent fashion plays a role. Continuity is a huge thing inside of a season and a team, because when you have continuity, you not only can lay down sort of your game model and you can lay down your priorities and how you want to play, but you can start to build nuances. You can start to get deeper about things. You can get into more details. And for us, we were almost never even able to get into some of those things because we were always just reshifting, readjusting, just trying to get around. And I went back and through this process, just looking back at where we were at the beginning of the season with our group. And when you start a season, I think in our first game or couple games, Memo was playing left wing and Efra was right wing. Dayon was up top, Ricky underneath. We were struggling to score goals in the first part of the season. We lacked really some of the dynamic stuff that you need inside of our league to be effective in transition and to be able to stretch the spaces so that our forwards could get off and running. That was a little bit of the beginning. We were defending okay, but we were not great, but okay, I think. But we just couldn't get goals to get on the right side of some of the early results, We were lacking Douglas. We were lacking Javi at the beginning. Obviously, losing Sam, we weren't able to replace him right off the bat in the way that we did. You lose Kevin, and losing Kevin was basically just a wash to break even in some ways, and you don't get that asset or utilize the asset when you make a trade. So it just became where we lost some of our dynamic qualities and weren't able to replace them, and I think that hurt us in the early stages as we struggled to score goals, but we were pretty sound, and we were somewhat healthy on the defensive side. I think Chris was the one we were kind of struggling to get there. Actually, and Sega was not so available at the beginning, so we were sort of healthy, but not really. And then we started to, we had a hard time getting those early results, which builds stress. It builds lots of things inside of the group emotionally, trying to just get over that initial hump. I think, in my opinion, it's neither here nor there, but I think we had a couple results that I think we should have really accounted for. We had the very difficult handball at home when Dayon was called for the handball late when he scored, when it kind of hits off of his chest and he scores against Vancouver last minutes of the game. For me, that's a really difficult call from where the referee was, and it stands, and that's probably a first win in maybe like the third game of the season. Dayon gets his first goal. He doesn't have the stress that he's carrying for not scoring goals. The team gets its first win. It takes some stress off potentially. So just a lot of untimely things that didn't go in our favor at the beginning, along with some of the challenges. And again, it builds that stress. Things that were going on, playing home games, and it's really quiet. Some, not really quiet. I appreciate the fans that were there, but it's different. It was different. There wasn't as much energy in the stands, and so there's a lot of little things. We weren't able to overcome those things. Let's just put it that way. As a group, we weren't able to overcome, and we needed to, and we had to, and we weren't able to. And that gave us, I think we had 9 points coming out of the first 14 games of the season. And that puts you in a tough place. We felt like if we could get healthy and we could stay healthy, that we weren't so far out of it, and there were still a lot of games left, that we could get there. And now we're talking about like June 1, roughly. We're starting to get a few guys back. Javi's coming back. I think some of the guys are coming back, and then we start to lose guys one by one. To not just injuries where they're going to be out for a few weeks, but to injuries where we're losing guys for the season. And these are not just any guys. These are guys who were supposed to be like the primary guys of our group, And so I felt like the group was extremely resilient for the next 15 games. Despite losing the guys we lost, I think we put down, I think it was maybe 26 points roughly over the next 15 at like a 1.62 points per game average, which was like second or third in the West during that stretch. So despite losing players, we were managing to at least take points that would have kept us in a solid position. And then we lose Ricky and we lose Mark down the stretch in the 5 most important games when you really have to take points. And the other thing that was hard was even when we were going 1.62, we weren't moving up the table. We were kind of staying in the same space, and there was a few games where we needed a win and we drew. And if we would have won, we probably would have jumped a couple teams and it would have felt or looked a little different. And we drew out a few times that we needed to win games at home and some others. I think, from June 1 and the other night was the first time we've lost at home since, June 1, which was several, I don't know how many exactly games, but I was really proud of again, it's the resiliency, but the quality wasn't there for us as a group. And I'm not putting that on the players. All of us, we just didn't get enough quality to make the plays we needed to make, both on the defending side, because we started to score goals again, but then we became really vulnerable defensively when you're talking about so many different back lines, guys playing with different faces all the time. It became where the lack of continuity, I think, in the back line was hurting us a little bit. And the fact that we're conceding goals then puts more stress on the attack, because attackers are thinking, okay, we're going to need to score 2, 3, 4 goals a game to try to win games. And so sometimes we overplay situations where we need to stay just in control of it. And those things just didn't come together in a seamless way. We had ebbs and flows in the season, but we never were able to really have that consistency that I think you need to have a solid season. And it's unfortunate. I was thinking in the last game, I don't know if I said it the other night, that I don't even think any of us even remember what our top form even looks like or what it might look like with everybody, because we just haven't seen that group in so long that it's easy to kind of, for your barometer to sort of shift, because you've seen so many different variations of different guys, and to remember what our top level even looked like was hard to even imagine, even at the end of the season. So, but the guys fought and they battled, and I was super proud of the group, just for their commitment and effort, in which they should. They're professionals, and that's the way it should be. But they were, and they did, and it was a tough season, and we stayed in it till 2 games left, and we just didn't have enough, and that's something that we've got to continue to think about in all aspects, right? In all aspects of the game, and the club will continue to reevaluate certain things. But every one of the guys that we lost in season injuring was in a game. It was not in a training field. It was in a game situation. Most of them non-contact. I think one was Martin was contact. Losing Ricky at the end was a horrible tackle from behind, in my opinion, that he almost misses the rest of the season in a really important time. So, but a lot of these were non-contact. I think, as I said the other day, we have to have a really close reevaluation of how we want to approach some of our really busy schedule, when these games are really squeezed together due to Leagues Cup, the management of the other thing that happens, and this is what I saw in 2018 with Toronto, is when your team is a little thin, in the first 7-8 games of the season, we're once a week. And that's okay. If your team's a little bit thin, you can prepare a group week on week, and you don't have to go too much into the rotations. But then you start to get into, I think it was late April, May, where you're starting to play 15. I think it was like we had like 6 or 7 games in 20 through 21 to 24 days or something. And you're a little bit thin, then you're trying to, and you're a little bit behind because you didn't pick up the early results. You're trying to, you're not so much into rotating so much. You're kind of into trying to get the best possible group you can out there to try to take points, because you've dropped some points early, and now you've got games back to back to back and like this. And so that in of itself is extremely challenging. So again, we just never really got onto the, we never really got on the right side of this season ever, even though I think we had a sound, not amazing, but a sound stretch in the summer.
And also, you look at the Ricky Cup and
Yeah, I know I saw, we went back and looked, and it was 20 minutes, I think, on the field together, and that was in Austin from minute 60 to roughly 80. Is the only time I could find that they were actually all on the field together at the same time this season for league play anyways. I don't know if I was missing something else, but we tried to find that. Another challenge, and that's one of the things that you want to do the best you can to try to ensure, and there's never a guarantee in that, is that your DPs, your best players, because that's what you're kind of building the whole structure around these types of players, is that they're on the field as much as you possibly can get them on the field, playing together. Those are your difference makers, and we just never got on the right side of that this year from the start.
And then with players like Gaston on the way back, and then Jalen, what his year might be next year with national team and all that, how does that affect how you build the roster going forward here, possibly with two open DP spots possibly?
Yeah, I think there's two parts of this, which is just kind of building our core group of players that you never want to have a ton of turnover from year to year. And I do think we have, when healthy, I do think we have a solid core group of players, of which you're always going to add a couple and subtract a couple along the way. Got to get your top end, your DP players. We've got to get that right, no matter what that looks like. And then Jalen as a young player, having him gain the experiences that he had gained at the beginning of this year, there's less questions about what his level is going to look like. Coming into this season, I would say, Jalen's for sure going to play some games, and we're going to see last year and see what this looks like. For me, I think he's one of our center backs that we can rely on in terms of his quality and how much he's developed as a player and physically developed. He's a guy that will be a core part of our center back group next year. That we know, so we'll build him in with that mindset. Gaston coming back a little bit for me, and Gaston is positional, how we utilize him, because it was in the last year and a half or so, he's been primarily our 6, but I think he has some qualities that can suit more of an 8 and up and down, box to box type of role, where he isn't just sitting in that position. So, depending on exactly how that plays out, might determine how we continue to structure our midfield and build around and build depth into that. So looking at those guys specifically, it's just going to be their roles, and I suspect both of them to play big roles in the team next year as we continue to build forward and being a part of that core group of guys.
I want to ask about a few players in regards to next year. And I know you guys are talking to Tyler. I'm guessing he is somebody that you definitely would like to have back.
Yeah, I thought Tyler, again, talking about guys early in the season, he showed up late into preseason and hadn't played for a while. So once he got fit, and once I think he got himself kind of integrated in the group, I'm not sure exactly how many games that was in, then I felt like you saw he was different than in our team, because he was dynamic, because he was a runner off the ball, because he was constantly stretching and going in behind. I think as he started to find his level and Douglas started to get healthy, then we started to become, and Ricky started to find, again, his group and his people and his integration in there. That's when I think we started to find goals. I think we started to have a better balance in our attack. And a part of that was Ty just finding, again, his form and fitness and all those things. So having that dynamic piece is so important. Having more than one, but having those dynamic pieces are so important in this league, because it is a league that has transitions and probably more than most leagues. It is a league that does have transitions that you have to be able to use. You've got to be able to stretch the opposition and play behind the opposition, especially if you want to be a team that controls possession. You got to have guys who are willing to work the spaces behind and create space for the guys who are in between lines. And Ty gave us a lot of that this season, which was important for our group. And so, of course, don't want to lose the guy like that. We would like to keep him and keep integrating him into what we're doing.
You expect it to sign him? You think that it's going to be a fairly simple negotiation?
I do. I think, and I hope. I never know, because I don't know what the expectations of the players and the agents are in these types of situations. I know he wants to be in LA. His family's here. He'd love to be here. We want him here. So on the basis of that, I hope there's definitely a deal there to be done, and that's my hope.
Douglas sounds like he's uncertain as to what he wants to do, and is the club uncertain as to what it wants to do, or would you like to weigh in on that?
I think Douglas, once he got healthy, and I think when he got healthy, I saw a more relaxed Douglas. I don't think he was thinking about things so much, and more when I say that, like his physical well-being. I think when he got healthy, he got happy. I think those two things kind of coincided. As he got healthy and happy, he started to perform in a way that was really different. He was a joy, especially when he got to that point. He was a joy to be around, to watch in training, to see. I think he let a little bit of the early parachute that I think he had on him, on his back, where he didn't really want to put himself way out there because physically maybe he was a little more fragile than he wanted. But I think when all of that kind of went away, I thought we started to see Douglas, and I think that was fun to watch, and it was amazing. By the end of the year, he was getting in the box, he was running behind, he was doing things that we were imploring him to do early on. He was starting to do it, goal dangerous, assist dangerous, all those kinds of things. So what I think Douglas, for him personally, I think he's revitalized his career a little bit, because maybe a year and a half ago, over the last 3 years, he was a guy that was always injured, and could you count on him? And I think down this last stretch for him, I think he's shown health and that he can find his form again. The challenge for us in the talk through is, when we talk about our DPs, is we have to know that our DPs are going to be on the field and going to be available as much as possible. Even you can talk, there are levels of qualities of player in the world, and even the highest level player, if they're not on the field, they can't help you. And so that's the evaluation that's going on, and the discussion also even with Douglas as to how or if he were to be here, how that could even work in the DP spot, for example, because you just got to know that with some level of certainty you're going to have availability as much as possible, barring the situation that we saw with some of our guys this year. So.
Chicharito, he's one that I think a lot of people are not expecting back. Is he someone that you want to bring back? Is he interested in coming back? Does it work, given his age, given the needs, given how valuable a DP player is?
Yeah, some of the things that I just mentioned about Douglas apply also in Javi's situation. So we have to sit down and talk with his people and himself and everybody else, and talk about what that looks like. But I think, again, I'm going to go back on a global strategy point of view here, which is that our top players, which are typically your DPs, they have to be available on the field, performing. You can put any name in that you want. It doesn't matter whether they're here or not here or anywhere else. We have to, as a club, do the best that we can to try to ensure that durability is there and then there's things you can't guarantee, but the durability is there, and that the quality and the level is there. So certainly when Javi was healthy, and last year he had a hell of a year this year trying to get healthy and stay healthy, and that was unfortunate. Obviously, last year he had an excellent season and scored a ton of goals. So these are things that we process, and we have to sit down and communicate and talk with his people.
But along the back line, that's an area where you rarely got a consistent back line.
Yeah.
The area of the field where you need the best
For sure.
chemistry. You've got people who will be coming back healthier if they're coming back. You've got Maya returning. You've got the elements of what could be a very good back line, but are you also looking outside? Does this team need so much money in this league is spent on attackers that right now the attacking players are overwhelming defenses often?
Yeah.
Is building a defense, and I'm going to look back, it's a different era, and the game's different here than it was when you were a rookie and in your first few years.
Yeah.
But that Galaxy backline that first year, those first couple of years, a backline of that quality is something that this team, it seems, could use.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the shout out from my former playing days. But yeah, I think, again, I do. I think when you look at our defending stats this season, we were abysmal in many ways. And there are some of them, there are a lot of reasons that we can talk about as to why that happened, but that can't happen. You can't concede goals in that way. We have to get stronger. Part of that getting stronger is getting quality and also consistency in our back line. And even at the beginning of the season, we had a little bit of consistency. We had a lot of youth back there. It was kind of Martine and 3 young guys, and obviously Lucas had a very solid season as one of the young guys. He had come into our league having already played 60 or 70 sort of first team games, I think, if I recall correctly, and so he had laid down a decent number of sort of those first team games and had some experience, and I think just that showed that he had that consistency. He's in a tough situation obviously now because he's with us on loan and has such a difficult injury, and we're trying to review all of our different options as it relates to his situation. And then you had Julian, who we were able to get on a youth fund, who we think has a lot of upside, but he's still growing and learning and developing. And then Jalen, who was another one of our young ones, was starting a lot of games early, who has a ton of upside and showed his quality, but then it becomes durability over the course of a 34-game season. So I think we got some young guys that gained some experience this year, but we've got to make sure that we have more continuity, that we make more mature decisions over the course of the game, and that collectively, when I say that, it's from front to back, that we are both more conscientious about the defending, even when we have the ball, and our exposures, but also just the collective defending, so that we can try to make the reads and the work of the back line a little bit clearer. But then there's also a piece there that there's a certain number of just individual moments that we have to clean up, that where our back line players have to be more consistent, and mistakes happen, but mistakes can't happen as often as they were happening. But I also still put it back, collectively we have to front to back be a little bit better over the course of the season. And again, continuity is important. So I think, in short, to your question, I think we had some guys get some experience that I think will move to a little bit another level this year, next year, hopefully. We are going to be consistently reviewing our options to continue to improve our back line and look at that for sure. You mentioned it inside of our league. There's just so much power and money that's going now into the attacking side of the game for many teams that you have to have stability, and you maybe aren't pouring as much money into the defending side, but you have stability, and one of the important things is when you push money into that attacking side, those guys got to help the back line defend too. They can't just play in one way, so that's part of the collective piece.
I wanted to ask you also about balance. You want to possess the ball, you want to attack, you want to be proactive on the attack. Teams know that. You often face very packed attacking thirds, so
Sure.
you kind of unlock that at the same time. And this season's an outlier because of the injuries, because of the lack of consistency in lineups and so forth.
Yep.
There's a lack of chemistry that breeds, but it leaves you exposed in your defensive third a lot of the time. Not their fault that they're getting exposed, but they are.
No.
In terms of balancing the way you want to play with the needs at the back,
Sure.
Is that something that needs to evolve?
Yeah, a little bit. It's something that we talked about a little bit at the beginning of, or at some point during the season. One of those things is that when we transition and we recover balls in the defending to attacking transition, we have to have a vertical threat to be able to also be effective in the attacking transition. Because if you do that and you can set up your attacks, not always from, I think we were number 2 or 3 in the league in terms of shots created from basically the build-out position, which is starting from your goalkeeper, playing it up the field and going. We were very, very high in that. I don't necessarily want to be that high in that. I think some of that is that you are winning balls too low, that you are transitioning to just secure the ball and not transitioning to attack. That's one of the elements that we want to certainly improve upon. I would like us to get into the attacking half of the field quicker in the transition, so it's not always in a build-out fashion. And I think with a little bit more dynamic work ahead of the ball, being a little bit better about how we defend and recover the ball, in a more less where we're just dropping down and getting underneath the ball, and more where we can be proactive about recovering the ball, sort of, for lack of better terminology, I don't like these, but on the front foot in a way, that you can play forward and you can now attack in that attacking transition phase. And then when you're in that phase, if that opportunity to finish the attack isn't on, then you can set up and keep possession, and now you're a little bit more in the attacking half of the field. But I think often, and we ran into this a bit, when you're building attacks from deep, you're opening up yourself really early and really low, close to your goal. And when things break down, you become a little bit more vulnerable in those situations. Or you're trying to open your field team up and go all the way the length of the field sometimes, and if you lose balls in the midfield area, you can become vulnerable. So that's one of the things I do believe, and I think if we become a little more dynamic at the top, that can help us. It gives us a little bit more of a threat in the attacking transition. I think if we become more solid in our continuity, and I think shifting a little bit of how we defend, not just the look of how we defend, but how we defend, can hopefully help us to be less in that build-out phase and a little bit more where we are not so opened up in those key areas of the field.
In terms of what you learned this year, how big of a learning curve was there going through this, and what ways did it compare maybe to 2018?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's sometimes you learn a lot of things that you don't really want to learn, but you learn them anyway. For me, the challenge was trying to constantly, if you have coaching is a lot easier when you have your starting group and the guys you propose that are going to play the majority of the minutes available to you a lot. Then you don't have to try to be creative. You don't have to try to figure out how new relationships are going to work on the field, how that's going to impact you, or how maybe you want to defend lower versus higher. You're trying to adapt to who's available to you sometimes, and that's not the fault of the players, and that's me trying to get the best out of our group, and sometimes I didn't get that right, and sometimes I got it a little more right. I think there were times where, I think we were pretty high in the league in terms of getting points from losing positions. That can say two things. That can mean that we were losing a lot and we were able to come back, or two, it could be that we'd made good adjustments inside of seeing what was happening and we were able to do. So sometimes, by having to adapt and not always having the availability of guys you would love to have, we put out a plan at the beginning that didn't always go well, but then once we kind of saw what was going on, I think we were able to make some adjustments that gave us some ability to get back and get a draw, to get a win, or do something. So for me, things are, consistency, as much as possible, trying to be consistent and excellent at what it is that we want to do. I felt like this year we were trying to adapt a few different things here or there. We were trying to manufacture goals at the beginning of the season. Then we were trying to prevent goals at the end of the season because we were leaking. And so it was, sometimes we were trying to stay as consistent as possible, but trying to put nuance in there to try to protect some of the things that we felt like maybe we were leaking or having trouble with along the way. So I think that was a big thing for us. Second is, one thing, I'm just being candid with I was working through this season is, wanting to come in and really help this group be able to take pressure. And because I think when you come to the Galaxy, and the expectation at the Galaxy is that you're competing and winning championships, that there is pressure and there is an expectation of that when you show up here. Our fans expect it. Our history expects it, and I think many of us and many of the guys, they're winners, and they expect it. So trying to find the balance this season of leaning into the guys for accountability, which then put a little bit of pressure on them, inside of us having a hard time maybe getting results early in the season, having a hard time scoring goals. Some of that's because we were a little bit light. When to put pressure on the group and when to lean on them and really push that accountability, and when to remove some of that because and make the environment not so stressful and a little bit more just progress-oriented, development-oriented. We needed players to get better and to perform at their highest level. That for me was an interesting thought process that I was going through all during the season, of when to lean on the group and when to kind of pull that stress out of the group and when to go. And it was, I racked my brain on that one a lot during the course of the season while I was trying to adapt and figure out the right solutions within the group. And the players were great. They were behind it, and they were a part of the solutions always. It was never anything there, and I really enjoyed working with the group. It was just a lot of variables that we were all trying to work through together, and you know, I think on some level we did a good job, on some level we didn't do good enough job, that's for sure.
Is the foundation here to compete for a championship next year?
Possibly. We have to get some things right. We have to stay healthy. We have to get some things right, and ultimately we'll have to execute those things. But you know, the decisions that we will make between now and the starting of the season, I think that getting guys in early in preseason, so whoever is a new player has the most time and the best possible scenario to integrate into the group. We've got to get off to a solid start. You know, I think as you're integrating potentially some new players, we've got to get off to a solid start and then keep improving through the course of the season. And if we do that, I don't know if I would tell you today that I think we're a supporters field winning team, because I think you have to really know your pieces, all of your pieces, and be ready for that. You never know. We'll see how it goes. But I think if we put together a really solid squad, stay healthy, and continue to grow through the course of the season, I believe 100% that we could be capable of winning a championship. We saw a little bit of that 2 years ago. In the midseason, we added Ricky and those guys, and we had a team with enough quality to compete for a championship. We just didn't get it done. We didn't execute. So I'd like to think so. I believe it can happen that fast.
Fair to say that in terms of what you're going to go after during the window, that's to come. You guys still have analysis to do and decisions to make.
For sure.
You can really start dwelling on that.
Yeah. I mean, what we work on is we're pretty clear about how we feel we need to make the team better, what the profiles, you know, what the qualities are of both the players that we have and the players we need, and all of that kind of stuff. And then it's going down, and as always, you've got to figure out where everybody's at, who is already here and who's going to be staying, and then figure out how work through getting the deals done to get the guys and the profiles that you believe can help take the team to another level, and the personalities and all those kinds of things. So that work will, it's ongoing. It's one of the good things I think now from when I first arrived, and that's not to say anything about anybody when I first arrived. We're far more proactive in this process than I felt like when we arrived, and part of that too, in fairness, was coming out of COVID. It wasn't maybe quite as easy to be as proactive as maybe we can be now, but those processes are in place, and I feel like whoever those players are, at whatever level those players are, getting those things done sooner rather than later would be beneficial.
Lastly, for me, in the conversations with players, both with Raw on Saturday and then today, there's been a lot of discussion on the protests and how that impacted the team, not having the fans there, and what you lose by not having that in your home games. But what I'm wondering more so is what happened with Chris and Chris's departure. In what ways did that, rather than the protest that
Sure.
went along with it, but just the upending of things in the front office, in what ways did that impact the club and impact the team?
Yeah, I think Chris's role was to try to tie a lot of things together in the club. As a president, you're trying to tie the business side, the technical side. You're trying to tie people together. So for me, when Chris was around, I communicated a lot with Chris to, give him our plans. He would always ask a lot of questions. As a former player, he was always into knowing what's going on. He wasn't really in a position where he was trying to make decisions. He was always asking questions and giving information on terms of how the league was going to process this or that, or how to best navigate certain things that might be, that could help us when we were trying to sign players, or what mechanisms would make sense in certain things. And he was involved, always in curious about the development of the academy and how we were developing the scouting department and our analytics department and tying all these things together. He was super intrigued about all of those ideas. But it was those of us working day to day who were driving the development of all those sides. He would come down on daily and just kind of want to know about stuff. And so with Chris is not here, we obviously don't have as many of those types of discussions. The way we're structured now is slightly different. But and the other thing that Chris gave us was the insight to sort of the league's. Our league is always evolving, and there's these product strategy meetings and all that kinds of stuff. And Chris was, I think, the only president, non-owner, who was sitting on the product strategy. And so you had some level of insight as to what conversations were going on, what direction was being considered about things. You could try to stay a little bit proactive on that side of things. To my knowledge, we're not represented at the moment in that, other than Dan is in certain situations, certain meetings, and certain things, but not maybe as on the day-to-day or whatever that was as before. So we're grinding with the league to try to find out what discussions are happening, what's going on, what may be the trends to next year if things are changing. Certainly with Messi coming the way Miami's going, that has if nothing else, put a little bit of pressure or insight on maybe what the next steps for the league might be in terms of growth and ideas. We want to know what those things are so that we can try to prepare and be on the front foot if something is going to evolve. It's those things. So we're just trying to gather and work to gather as much information as possible. Obviously, Chris's involvement on the business side is for those guys to say. Chris was a friend, but also I think somebody who I could just bounce things off of. So, with him not around, I use Tom and the rest of us. We have regular meetings with different groups, right? Whether it's our technical group, our ELT, which is kind of our direction group and for the club. And so we have meetings still and very formal. So it's not totally different in the grand scheme of things. Maybe just the link, the person who's always downstairs, upstairs, who's kind of there is not as consistent as in the past, which is okay. It's just where we are. Yeah, it's understandable for sure.
Next, we'll go to Zoom questions. We'll go ahead and start with Josh. Go ahead, Josh.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Hey, Josh.
I wanted to sort of go back. You've missed the playoffs the last 2 of the 3 years. I know we've talked about those scenarios in the past, but what makes you think that you're still the best guy for this job?
Because if you look at history as a coach, also I have a ton of consistency of not only just getting to the playoffs, but getting to the finals, winning a championship. I know what it takes to win in this league. I think if you look at any club and other coaches who also are in this league and have won championships, they have seasons that are these outlier seasons where they have injuries, they have issues, they have challenges. Many teams prior to the introduction of the Leagues Cup, which was very new this year, you would see a lot of teams who played in Champions League who would have very difficult seasons, injury issues, very good coaches who also struggled when they went through these types of challenges. I don't think these challenges define who you are as a coach or your ability to be successful. They define the challenges of this particular season, and that we were not able to get on the right side of these particular challenges for many reasons. But doesn't take away sort of my knowledge and vision of the game and my ability to lead these players. Not once did you hear a player turn around and say that we weren't moving in the right direction or that things were not good. Every one of them was behind it and believed in the process, believed in what we were trying to do. That's the first most important thing. After that, they realized that it was a challenging year for circumstances, many of which were beyond our control. And so that's why I believe it. I know I work my ass off. I'm here every minute, and I care about this club, which doesn't win games, but it certainly is what I do. on a daily basis that matters to our group. They see that I work my ass off, so I lead in that capacity. And they know we have a good way of working on the field as well in terms of training and helping players to continue to improve, but giving us a clear vision moving forward. So for many reasons, I think those are the reasons why, and I do believe that we will get there. You saw progress over year 1 and year 2, and at the end of year 2, I think there was a lot of belief in the capacity that this club and this team could win and move in the right direction. And then you have a year like this year that I said to you before was a bit of a unicorn in terms of all the different challenges that were posed in front of it. So now we got to get on the right side of it. We got to learn from what happened this year. I will take you back to 2018 at Toronto when we had a similar type of season. And if you recall, in 2019, the season ended with Toronto playing Seattle in the MLS Cup final. So I also have a history of managing through these situations and putting club on the right side of it in the very next season.
And you have 17 players, I think, that either have contract up or contract options, right? So there's a lot of flexibility there. Do you think that you're going to be looking at 17 new players, or do you really feel like there is a core here and you expect maybe half or a majority of those players to be back?
I don't think we'll be looking at 17 new players. I don't know off the top of my head what that number will be. I do think we have a good core group. Again, when healthy, for the last half of the season, you didn't see one of the best midfields, in my opinion, in the league, even together on the field. So that was it. Plus, we continue to add depth and strength to our midfield. Again, we've got to continue to address positions where we feel like we have some decisions to make. But I think we have a core group that is here, but I think we need to be very pointed and very calculated about how we improve this team. But I think the core is here. We just didn't get to see them. As I said when I started this thing off, a lot of people forget how good this team actually could be just because they haven't seen them together in so long. And so it's easy to question at the end of a season where we are. But if we had a pretty interesting group of players who came out on the field on the last day who were all in their street clothes and none of which were in their playing gear. And so when you tie that together, you realize that there is definitely something here that we can build on, but there's definitely some areas that we need to consider how we're going to make the right steps forward.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Next, we'll go to Charlie Boehm.
Hi, Greg. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you good.
Always appreciate your insight, especially the detail, the insight you can provide. I know you've spoken about Javier a little bit. I just wanted to ask a little bit more because there's such a confluence of different factors here with his character, his injury, his age. I know there's a lot of unknowns, and I'm curious what the process is like for how you make the decisions and he makes the decisions. Maybe if you could just share, what unknowns are you can't predict and what maybe you just aren't able to speak about right now.
Yeah, I think, a lot of these are just but just processing and analyzing short-term, long-term direction of our group and how we can be successful next year, but also how we can continue to be successful for years to come. That is, that's part of it. Javi, obviously, he has shown his qualities as a player, as a leader. We all know Javi very well, and we appreciate Javi. And it's just kind of like it's a combination of where he's at, where we're at, and thinking both short and long-term success. We all know that in this league, the DP positions are such coveted positions. You don't get many of them, and so it's when you make these types of decisions, they have to be very thoroughly thought through, and wise decisions have to be made, and also it's working, and I believe always working, with the players, but ultimately it's our responsibility as a club and my responsibility to make the decisions that are going to be best for the club. But it's a tough one because it's a key one. It's a key one. After having a season like this, you don't have space, and so you have to make really, really good decisions right now. And so we're just trying to analyze every aspect of that decision. From continuity to what does new look like. You don't know exactly, and so it's a lot of things you have to consider when going through these steps.
Has he expressed to you his intention to come back and overcome the injury and continue his career?
My early discussions with him is, and the work he has put in, from what I hear from doctors and what I've heard from him and whatnot, is he would love to play. He would love to be in LA. I think all of those things are pretty consistent. He's trying to do the work. He's never been a guy since I've been around who's been short of putting in the work, and so that I think he is pretty clear on what he would like to do in the grand scheme of things. So again, figuring all of this out is a challenge.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Alex Ruiz.
Hey Greg, of all the contracts that are going to be up, you have a couple loans. Novak Mitrovic, do you feel like you got a big enough sample size to assess him in the first team? And with Caligari, how much does his injury affect your guys' decision to bring him back?
With Novak first, our context with Novak is a lot through the course of the season where we really got to saw him, maybe not in a ton of games. I think he ended up with 4 first-team games. In the context that we had with him through the season, I think he's a goalkeeper with high potential. By the time he comes on at the end of the season, we're not a very stable group, and so it's hard to take 2 games at the end of the year and assess the keeper and say those were his opportunity. I think he showed us through the course of a season, both with his work in the training ground and I thought he had 2 good games in Leagues Cup, even though we didn't win those games. I thought he looked solid. I think his work rate, the things like that, he shows that he's worthy. We have to make that decision now and decide our directions with our goalkeeper crew. But I think he has showed me, in my opinion, in our goalkeeper crew and staff, that he has high potential. And at some point there has to be a leaping off point for him where he starts to gain that experience to go with his potential and with his quality so that he can take more steps forward. And so we have to decide ultimately if that's with us or if that's not going to be with us. But I do think that he is a young man who has very, very high ceiling when it comes to the goalkeeping aspects of the game and potential. As far as Lucas, really challenging situation with Lucas, obviously, because he was a warrior for us this season, and he would have been up there in terms of number 1, number 2, number 3 in minutes played for sure up until he was injured. He was always out there, and I think he showed his durability until he couldn't do it anymore, and that's an unfortunate thing. And the issue is he's on loan. We have to explore all of the different possibilities as it relates to his loan and our working with his club and him to see if there's something that fits together and makes sense. He probably, nowadays with ACLs, you're talking probably a year for the player to come back really safe and to likely not have I think a year is kind of the over-under for not having some sort of significant injury on the other side. You decrease your percentages by a lot. So it's trying to figure out what this looks like to support him and see if it works with him while still moving forward with our season and our team and trying to figure out what that looks like. It's a complicated one because he certainly and the time here earned his stripes when he was here.
Yeah, early in the season, the fan boycott was a big thing going around here. I mean, we were asking you about it. You had interactions with fans at one point after a game. I just want to know, just how much did that affect you, knowing that cloud is also hanging around while you guys are not getting results early in the season?
Yeah, this is something I just really am over talking about too much. What I would say to it is when players play home games and they come to the stadium, they play to perform in front of their fans, to drive, to draw that energy, to use that energy. We have a banner, if you will. I don't know if that's what it's called, but it's right outside of our locker room. When they walk out of the locker room, it says they'll always remember how you make them feel. And we're specifically talking about our fans. So going out and performing and sharing the energy, both of what we bring on the field with what comes out of the stands and from our fans, is a huge part of what makes home field advantage. It's a huge part of what makes playing the home game so exciting and invigorating for players. And to be honest, didn't have that at the beginning of the season in the way that we would normally have that. We still had a wonderful group of fans who were there to support us, but the energy was different. And so it just is what it is, and it was what it was. But that's what professional players look forward to when they talk about playing at home. It's the shared energy and the playoff of the fans, the entertainment, all those kinds of things. What I would say is, what I said before is June 1, somewhere around there, the fan protests somewhat sort of vaguely kind of ended and people started to come back to the stands, and then did come back, and we lost one home game from June 1 till the end of the season. It was the last game of the season. So I don't know, you can count that for what it is in terms of points missed or points lost and points whatever, because I don't really know what the answer is to that, quite honestly. What I know is the energy and the environment is crucial for the guys. They love that. They look forward to that. They have voiced to me that they missed that, and that was disappointing for them. And that's all we've talked about from that side of things. At the end of the day, that's just the realities of the home environment. You want it, and the guys missed it, and they voiced that to me in many ways.
But you didn't feel affected too much by it?
Of course. Look, I coach a team who I also play off of their energy and make decisions based off of their energy and their performance, and I also want to be in the stands when it's packed and it's loud and it's noisy. Take the Rose Bowl as a wonderful example of that type of environment at the highest of level and numbers, and you saw an incredible performance from our guys on that day. So, and I take from that, I think it's amazing because it also generally encourages / forces our players to play at their highest level in many ways, which makes my job a little bit different and or sometimes easier when the energy is right and the guys have the right energy, and all of that is coming together. Then in some ways it both is invigorating for me as a coach and former player and someone who does this also and cares about this club deeply. Those things are important to me as well. I care about the environment, and I want our fans to be happy with our team, and I want our team to be happy with our fans, because then you have the right relationship to try to build successful continuity. Again, it's not just the continuity of our players on the field, but it's the continuity of our whole relationship between fans, players, club, direction, all those things. If we're all on the same page, we become a stronger unit. That's what us against them is supposed to be, really. It's supposed to be us, the LA Galaxy family, which is everyone who has a relationship with the Galaxy against everyone who doesn't have a relationship with the Galaxy, right? And there was a little bit of a gap in there, I think, at times this year.
Thanks, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we'll go to Rob. Oh, no, we'll go to Rob. We'll finish Zoom, and then we'll go to in-person. Rob Jalen.
Hey, Greg, thanks for your time. You spoke the other day about many people not seeing what happens behind the curtain, and you speaking about a lot of things kind of lining up behind the scenes with analytics, with scouting and stuff like that. For you, what is the last piece of that puzzle that needs to fall into place for the Galaxy to return back to that elite level? Or is that piece in place and now you guys just need to kind of solidify things?
Yeah, I think we are. We're pretty well connected on that side. I mean, we're always pushing every day. If you want to take our different departments on the analytics side, where we have some really, really good information coming in, and we are mining that information in different aspects of our game, whether it's our technical performance in the game, our physical performance in the game, our guys' individual performances. We have a lot of good information that we're using and that we're mining. We're continuing to make that better. We're continuing to look in this offseason for staffing that can really help us read that information in better ways. That's one of the growths that we want to make on the technical side, is to continue to build our analytics side. We've done an incredible amount of work, and a lot of credit goes to the guys on our sports science staff. Also, Sam Green, who is my video analysis. I mean, if anyone could actually see the amount of building that they have done and what they have created inside of our our club to, we have a whole app, website, everything that reads everything and analyzes it in a way and puts it out there for our use and availability. We're going to continue to grow and get better at that stuff. Getting somebody in the house that can really be a great reader of that information, because data is only as good as what you kind of read from it. We can get better on that side. Scouting has definitely gotten more proactive and gotten better. We have ground scouts. We have Mikey helping to lead them, Jovan getting on the ground and meeting with people. We have Will, who's in there also meeting with people, pushing on different ways. Our scouting is continuing to get better and more proactive. Where we were a year and a half ago and 2 years ago was very reactive off of recommendations, and now we're very proactive in identifying through both statistical measures as well as subjective watching. We're looking and seeing profiles who people aren't necessarily telling us about. We're finding them, and we're going in proactively having those conversations, and so we're much further advanced on that side of things. There's a lot of that coming together. So what has to happen next is that we have to make sure that all of that work goes into building the best team, keeping that team healthy, keeping that team on the field, and performing at the highest level. So this year, again, was, in my opinion, a bit of an anomaly when it comes to the injury side of things and the types of injuries that we had. This year, we had some new challenges, which was in how sports science will work and different things will work, and how we're going to manage the new type of season that we're in, which is Leagues Cup in the middle, and team league games being pushed together tighter at the beginning of the season. We've got to do a good job of analyzing and utilizing all that information and doing it. So what now is what's in front of the curtain has to be more successful. Part of that is, again, putting together the best team and then putting the best team on the field and getting results. So now we have to, it's all what you guys see now, not necessarily what we do behind the scenes, but what you, everyone, the fan and the media and everyone else sees needs to now take that step that proves the work that we've been putting on is the right work and can be successful.
Thanks, Greg.
Go, Damien.
Yeah, Greg, with the new structure of the front office, everybody reports to Dan. How involved is he in the day-to-day, week-to-week process? And then you personally, you're coming in with 1 year left in your contract.
Correct.
Be back next year?
Am I sure I'll be back next year?
Will you surely be back at
Yes, that's my expectation ultimately. I don't hire or fire myself, so someone else has to determine that. But yes, my anticipation and expectation and my conversations are yes. So, and we're very bullish. When I say we, in my conversation with Dan and everyone around, we're very bullish about the direction of the club. We're all very aware of the challenges that existed, and also the fact that we expect and need to be more successful than we were this year, but we understand the reality of the challenges, which is there. But the expectation is that we're going to continue to be bullish, to keep pushing forward, to keep building this team, and the expectation is next year that we won't encounter the types of things we encountered this year, and the expectation is of a season of success. And so, how involved is Dan on the day-to-day? I probably not super involved on the day-to-day. I mean, he's obviously running a huge, he's a CEO of AEG. He's got a lot going on, so he's not super involved on the day-to-day. But he's in the know. He knows what we're doing. He understands our plans. We probably connect, every once a week. If not, if it's a super busy week where we have 3 games, it might be every other week. But in general, we connect very frequently. He's aware of any thoughts, plans, and also the developments that are going on within the day-to-day, but also the thoughts that are going on with where the future and the direction of things lies. So he's aware. He's very aware, and that's the most important thing, and that he is helping to guide us in the things that we need clarity on and giving us that direction.
You've had a long partnership with Robin Fraser, one of your closest friends, someone who you speak soccer with.
Sure.
On a regular basis. He, of course, wants to be a head coach. If he is not a head coach, is there any chance that we might see him on your staff next year?
I've learned in this business to never say never. I know he's focused, as he should be, on the opportunities that will exist from a head coaching position. I also don't want to speak for him, but I am pretty confident that he's going to be pretty selective about that process now. Yeah, I think he's. I talk to him, frequently, so he's certainly going to be in the running. So of these opportunities that are out there, and we'll see. And then I don't know what'll come beyond that, but we're always in conversation, so we'll see where it goes.
And lastly, you're of a certain age. We all are getting older.
Yes.
As one a dozen years older than you, right? I have noticed that you've grayed a little bit this year. How much of that is going through something like this?
I don't know, because I don't know if I know physiologically how these things all equate. But this season was a challenge. It was a special challenge, and it was. I said it the other night. There was a lot of. It was emotional. It was stressful. It was. I say that for everybody around, because we all envision, and there's few seasons that I've had that I would define as not successful, and in many years, and this one you have to. It was not successful, but you have to redefine success and understand why. I think that's always the question that is answered on the field, off the field, is why. Why do I do this? Why do I do that? Why did this happen? And how do we get better? How do we improve? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And in seasons like this, there's an endless amount of asking yourself why, and trying to find those solutions and resolve certain situations, improve things. And Scott, most people here will tell you what my work rate is like here, and in a normal season, and in a season that was like this, just I couldn't turn it off ever. There was always something I felt like that I was trying to focus on, fix, correct, both of myself, and also just of what we were going through, because I believe ultimately I'm responsible for those things. And so for me, this was certainly a stressful season, and so maybe some gray, if that's how it works, or if I'm just getting older, I'm just getting older. But if that has anything to do with gray, then certainly some of that can be a product of a season with lots of challenges.
You see presidents come in with a certain color of hair by the end of their first term.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, we'll see. I appreciate that. Yeah.
All right, thanks for your time.
All right, thanks, everyone.